What is up, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Upper Cervical Corner. My name is Dr. Kramer, and this is our show where we talk about upper cervical care and the other areas and arenas that would potentially impact our health in some way, shape, or form. Today, I want to dive into a really interesting topic that is a challenge for many of us in the Western culture. And this challenge is the idea of a symptomatic expression, right? Most of the time, this is what causes us to actually make a medically informed decision, is because of a symptom that is inhibiting our life, right? Whether that be headaches or vertigo or Meniere's disease or some classification of a symptom, right? That's something that causes us to take action. And really determining it is your response is going to be a myriad of factors, but the biggest one that I have found is going to be on your family of origin because you are going to fall somewhere between rub some dirt on it or go to the ER for a cough. Somewhere in between is a healthy medium, right? Those two extremes are very dangerous to exist in because the negligence of, rub some dirt on it over time can create havoc. And the paranoia of the ER for everything can also cause problems. The pendulum needs to fall somewhere in the middle. Unfortunately for us, being Westerners, our pendulum is also influenced heavily by mainstream media, by the news, by what Hollywood is suggesting, and by commercials, right? And unfortunately for this, what I want to let you know today, and what I hope you can really instill in your understanding of health, is that there is not a single magic surgery, magic pill, magic potion you can take that can immediately make your symptoms go away. That's the first thing that we need to lay the ground rules for. You see, because if we go look up what the expression of health is, nowhere is a symptom listed. If you look at Merriam-Webster and their dictionary, if you look at the Dorland's medical, health is a complete state of well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmaries, right? So there's nothing about a symptom in that with the expression of what is health. So when it comes down to it, we have this challenge that we are working on navigating, especially with patients who are symptom driven with their actions, right? And so for this, it takes almost a full cultural transition in your school of thought and in your understanding of human physiology to recognize why a symptom may be present and what the process looks like to undo that. And so what we have today and what we are going to be looking at is I started taking some notes here on this, but what we need to discuss is this idea of symptom presentation and the clinical outcomes and the goals of upper cervical care. You see, so many of us look at this and they're like, hey, I'm going to need to have a surgery. Well, the goal of a surgery is to fix something that's broken, not necessarily to eliminate the symptom. That is why, like, if you get a knee replacement, the majority of your healing that takes place happens under physical therapy guidelines and occupational therapy guidelines, not the surgeon, right? And if you get an MCL, it's the same thing. If you get a back surgery, it's the same thing. Everything is going to be dependent upon not the surgery, but what you do after, right? So when we look at upper cervical care, the question becomes is that, we are trained if I receive an adjustment, my symptoms should go away. Yes, but no. And so with this, what I need to do is break this down into four discussion points that we're going to have today. The first one is what is the goal of upper cervical care? And if you've watched any of my other videos, if you have paid attention to anything in the upper cervical world, the ultimate goal of an upper cervical chiropractic adjustment is to restore adaptation. And adaptation is your ability to respond to stress, right? And so I'm going to give you a text box here because this is way easier to do. The ability to respond to stressors placed upon a physiological system, right? Now, if you lack adaptation, what that means for you is that you lack the ability to actually, really, you lack the ability. Oh my goodness, what is this doing to me? You lack the ability to respond to stress placed upon your system. And as a result, over time, your body will begin to break down. The physiological system will become inefficient, and you will have a symptomatic expression. So, our goal in the upper cervical world is to measure how well you are adapting to your environment. And if you've ever watched one of my videos, you will recognize that adaptation is measured in three straight lines, and lacking adaptation is going to be the presentation of a repeatable three lines, right? This is considered a static state. This is considered a dynamic state. If you sit in a static physiology, your body cannot adapt to stress. And over time, you will develop a disease of some type, right? It is then our goal to provide an upper cervical adjustment to the C1 or the C2 vertebrae to restore adaptation and then sustain adaptation over time. And the longer you sustain adaptation, the better your expression of health will be. This is where the problem comes in, because then what ends up happening is we stop adjusting, right? Our goal in the care is to stop adjusting you. Our goal is to actually not adjust you. Our goal is to sustain adaptation principles. Now, at the very beginning, it may take us more adjustments to get there, but as you move into a maintenance module, it is more of a check and sustain, and more so than it is a check and intervene, right? So this becomes a preventative based model, which is designed to sustain your quality of health that you are really, really building underneath our care. Now, the variable, my symptoms don't change. So now we have this problem, right? We run into this issue where we say, hey, listen, your upper cervical spine is stable. Your neurophysiology is stable. Your biochemistry is stable from the analysis of an upper cervical perspective. However, something is not getting better. Something else is going on. There are still problems present. That means that we have to address one of the four areas of your life, and maybe possibly all four, that are often neglected or not analyzed. And these four are broken down into this wonderful box, right? I try to make things easy for us. You have your social, your spiritual, your physical, and your intellectual. What this means is that your body is an organic system. It is designed to sense environments, internal and external. So, if you are unorganized, if you are blocked, if you are congested, if you are destructive in any one of these arenas, it can have a implication on your health presentation. So we can start with social, right? If we're having trouble in our marriage, if we're having trouble in our friendships, if we do not feel respected at our work, are fulfilled in our work, or we do not have a community surrounding us, that moves into something that is called isolation. And isolation creates habits of really looking towards trajectories of like deficiencies, right? So if you are isolated over time, you can create anxiety, you can create panic, you can create depression, you can create these environments internally that are not healthy, right? Same thing spiritually. If you don't have your spiritual house in order, you will create that feeling over time, right? Isolation, you can put lonely over here. That's another good one for that descriptor. Spiritual, you are going to feel lack of purpose, right? That is really what this is. And if you don't understand what your bigger purpose is in this world, you have to tune in spiritually to what you're working at, right? Do you actually trust in God, right? Do you actually expect things of Him? And if you do you actually live your life in a way that shows that, right? Maybe you need to get your spiritual house in order. Maybe you need to listen to the Bible in a year. Maybe you need to spend more time in solitude and quiet reflection, right? Physical. This one's really simple. Diet, exercise. I think that this deserves a podcast all on its own, because these are two areas that we have the most confusion about. These are two areas that are most over grossly sold in commercials and social media. And there are two areas that really are destructive for our health, right? I would tell you that a majority of the problems we are facing in America, in the West, with regards to chronic disease, are going to be a result of this heavily and this heavily. The last piece of this is going to be intellectual and is stimulation environments, right? Are you reading? Are you writing? Are you creating? Are you doing things on a daily basis that allow you to use your gifts to the best of their ability, right? You will find that each one of these actually creates a cycle. All of these are dependent upon one another because if your spiritual house is in order, you will have your social, physical, and intellectual house in order. If any one of these are in disarray, you will have a collapse of the entire system. And over time, that will weigh on you heavily on a neurological, a neurophysiological, a biochemical standpoint, which will cause a disarray of your body and give you the presentation of a symptom, right? So while you could actually be stable from an upper cervical perspective, you could actually have a problem in the four arenas of your life that create the expression of health that we are as a human being, right? Health is a complete state of well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmaries. So if our houses spiritually are not in order, we are not going to have a complete state of well-being. If our social house is not in order, you're not having a complete state of well-being. If your intellectual house is not in order, not having a complete state of well-being. If your physical health is not in order, you do not have a complete state of well-being. So what you will quickly find here is that while society is going to try to sell you the idea of a magic bullet, a magic pill for all of our poor life decisions, you will find the exact opposite has to be done. In fact, you'll often find that a lot of work is going to go into you creating and sustaining health. And it's going to be focused on really where do you prioritize your time on a daily basis. For me, if I were to organize this, I would tell you the first thing you need to organize is going to be your spiritual house. The second thing you need to organize is your physical house. The third thing you need to organize is your social. And the fourth is your intellectual. Social and intellectual probably are on the same plane. This is of highest purpose, right? Because if you do not have this in order, the other three are going to fall apart. That, my friends, is probably more than likely 99% of the time the reason why, if we are looking at upper cervical care as a form of symptom reduction, that most of us are going to tell you that, yes, we can improve the quality of a physical expression of a symptom if you do, in fact, have an underlying upper cervical issue. However, once we create and sustain adaptation, as measured by the ability to respond to stress placed upon your physiological system, showing a dynamic state of neurophysiology, then we know that if you are still expressing symptoms over time, that there is another part of your life that is not being addressed, that is impeding your ability to heal, that is inhibiting your body's ability to operate at its very best. So, what my plea to you and what my argument would be for you is that if you are in these environments, if you are seeing an upper cervical doctor, if you are not getting better, you need to go home and pull out a piece of white paper and get your house in order. Really ruthlessly evaluate your spiritual health, your physical health, your social health, and your intellectual health, and see if there are areas for improvement that you could really, really change or transform to ensure that the work that you're doing on the physical side, i.e., upper cervical care, can be supported by the relational side of your life. Because those two have to marry together to create the expression of health, right? Because sometimes the unexpected is going to happen. Yes, we can say we had a car wreck, we need upper cervical care. It's when the abstract starts to happen, when we start to have a stress in a relationship, when a child starts to go through a trauma, when we start to have financial ruin, when we start questioning God and his plan for us, right? And why bad things happen to good people. When we stop challenging or stimulating our brain, that we really have a hard time evaluating that. So today, get your house in order. Stop paying attention to mainstream media, to news, to social media. Look at those four pillars and ask yourself the question, where do I need to improve these areas in my life? And what steps can I take in the next 30, 60, 90 days to make these better so that I can have the quality of health that I desire? Symptoms, remember, are somewhere between rub some dirt on it, go to the ER. If you fall in that midline, it is a consistent, persistent chronic issue. It's important to have an upper cervical doctor evaluate you, find out if it is indeed a problem. And if it's not an upper cervical issue, help you navigate that path by going down through those 4 pillars we discussed today. That, my friends, is why symptoms and upper cervical care have a really, really good uh, relationship when it comes to ensuring the success of your health and your health desires.